Hi, my name is Sarah McKune, and I want to talk to you a few minutes today about food security and stunting, particularly in low and middle income countries. To start with, I want to talk about what do we mean by food security. I know in the context of this week and a lot of the conversations that are going on globally right now, we may have a common understanding, but to be sure, when I say food security, I really mean that condition where all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious foods that meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. This definition is deliberately broad. It encompasses cultures of different places, as well as expectations and access to markets. It's an all-encompassing definition deliberately. When we begin to think about food security globally, we know that there are important threats to food security. At the moment, COVID-19 is on everyone's agenda and radar in terms of how that has disrupted food supply chains, but there are other mechanisms at play. Climate change is one of the greatest threats to food security, particularly in already affected communities. So those communities who have poor access to foods are likely to be significantly compromised by the changes in climate. Population growth is another major threat to food security, particularly in low-income countries where population growth rates are still very high. Food production, food prices, a loss of food varieties, and lack of land and water are also issues that constrain food security globally. My area of interest and the things that I work most closely on fall under the context of stunting. Stunting is a tool that we use to understand linear growth and where linear growth has been impeded because of malnutrition specifically. So stunting is an interaction that is caused between a lack of food as well as the child's overall health situation. But we use it as a measurement for undernutrition. And so when I say it's the best measure of undernutrition, it's because it's a cumulative indicator. It's looking at the accumulated loss to body and mind development of a child over time. We tend to look at stunting among kids under 5. So when you look at child stunting rates, it's typically showing you a child under 5. 45% of children cause mortality is directly or indirectly related to undernutrition. 155 million under 5s are affected. We know that stunting impairs both cognitive and motor development. We also know that it increases incidence of chronic diseases later on in life, such as diabetes and obesity. Kids that are well-nourished are more likely to stay in school, earn higher wages, and escape poverty than their stunted counterparts. When we look at stunting globally, the distribution is not equitable in the world. Sub-Saharan Africa bears the burden for the highest rates of stunting. You can see in the map here that there are belts across the African Sahel, denoted in the red here, as well, sorry, here you go, as well as Central Africa, DRC Congo and other places. And then there are belts across India and other parts of South Asia where high rates of stunting are quite prevalent. A few in Southeast Asia as well as in Central America. It's a problem that has been getting better. We've made strides to address undernutrition, and the rates of stunting have indeed gone down in many places. But these improvements are under threat due to complexities of COVID-19, synergistically interacting with complexities of climate change and other hardships in these areas. When we think about addressing undernutrition, particularly in low-income countries, one of the things that we have to be aware of is that foods are not all created equal. So when you try and get a woman or a child or a man adequate nutrients for daily living, it's quite difficult to do on a plant-based diet. And that has to do with bioavailability and the density of nutrients within animal source food. So I really like this picture taken from Gupta that looks at cooked bovine liver and how nutrient dense it is in the context of iron. So when you look at the recommended daily iron intake for women, 18 milligrams is recommended. A woman would have to eat 2.4 kilograms of spinach in order to get that iron. Iron is in spinach, but it's not the heme iron. It's not bioavailable in the same way that it is in iron that's in animal source food. You can see beef is 625 grams on up through lentils, kidney beans, and then cooked peas. So foods are different. And this matters particularly with regards to children whose stomachs are very small. So trying to pack as many nutrients as possible into small amounts of food is a goal. Animal source foods are naturally nutrient dense and diverse. And I want to take just a moment to tell you about a study that I conducted in Burkina Faso that focused on egg consumption. So I wanted to just first show you the value of an egg. So from a protein, iron, iodine standpoint, as well as essential elements like choline and vitamin A, folate, zinc, long chain omega acids. These are long chain omegas, sorry. These are important elements of the food matrix in an egg, and to demonstrate how valuable eggs can be in such a small, tightly packaged food. So the egg study that I conducted with a team in Burkina Faso, as well, along with colleagues here, was a culturally tailored, community-driven behavior change project that aimed to catalyze egg consumption among infants in very poor households by improvement of women's empowerment and poultry production among women. So what you see in the picture here are children and women enrolled in that study. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it was a 3-armed cluster randomized control trial. The full intervention arm, which you see here, there were 6 villages that had 83 children enrolled. There were 6 villages with 89 infants in the partial and 6 villages with 88 infants in the control arm. These villages got different interventions. So if you look in this box here, in the full research arm, the villages received a behavior change project and the children received 4 chickens. In the partial intervention arm, no additional chickens were given to the families, or gifted, as we say, to the families or to the children, but they did get the behavior change intervention otherwise. The control research arm received nothing. We followed these children for 10 months and found really, really important results. The most important thing is that we were able to increase egg consumption in the full intervention group by 5.6 eggs over the control group. These children were eating over 6 eggs a week by the end of the trial, which is pretty close to an egg a day. The partial intervention group was able to increase egg consumption to 1.7 over the control group. So over 2 eggs a week were being consumed in that group. Poultry production went up significantly as well. We increased poultry production by over almost 12 chickens in the full intervention group and by over 3 chickens in the partial intervention group. One of the things we did not anticipate was how much impact we could have in this 1-year intervention on growth. And we were able to change both wasting and underweight, significantly reducing wasting and underweight in children in both the partial and full intervention groups on both fronts. We were not able to move stunting. And while that is not surprising given the length of the study, the directionality was there. So there were improvements, just not significant enough to pick up in this study here. The last thing I wanted to point out was that we were also able to significantly change women's decisions about eggs. So we know that when we're focused on nutrition, particularly in households, agricultural households in low and middle income countries, being able to empower women to help them have more autonomy in decision making, particularly as it affects food within the household, is an important pathway and artery into changing the nutritional status of both the woman, and her children in the household. I just wanted to share those results with you today to demonstrate how important it is that we be thinking about women's empowerment, about agricultural production, livestock production, when we think about nutrition in these parts of the world. Thank you for your attention.